Okay, hi grade 10s. So this is Unit 5, Lesson 4. And I decided to do a video for this one today because this is quite a tricky concept for kids to understand. I tend to do a lot of questions, a lot of examples. I actually spend a couple of days on this lesson, usually when I teach it in class. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to record a video and try to explain to you the best I can how to find domain and range of a graph. I have quite a few examples. I have 3 here and 6 on the other page. So this might be a bit of a longer video, but if you want to skip ahead, feel free to. I'm also going to post these notes on my website. Okay, so domain is a set of x values that a graph touches. So we know that a graph has 2 axes, the x-axis, and this vertical one is the y-axis. Okay? 0 is in the middle. So this is 1, this would be 2, this would be 3, 4, 5, 6, it continue on. And then on the left side is -1, -2, -3, and so on, just like a number line. When we're on the y-axis, we go up 1, then 2, and so on. And then down here, we go down 1, down 2. So it's -1, -2, and continues that way. So we have to keep those numbers in mind when we're figuring out domain and range. The next thing we have to recall is these 4 symbols. Okay, so when you have this symbol like that, it means less than. When you add in the little line underneath, it means less than, but then once we add that in, it's or equal to as well. So this is greater than, but once we add the line in, it's greater than or equal to as well. When we see closed circles, okay, it's going to be one of these 2 symbols. When we see open circles, it's going to be one of those 2 symbols. So when I ask you to find the domain and range of this graph right here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I am asking you to tell me, let's start with domain. Domain is what x values does this graph touch or span? So I always say, let's just work left to right, okay? The x-axis is the horizontal axis and it's left to right. We're not doing up, down right now, we're doing left to right. So what I ask my students is, how far left does my graph go? So to the left, this is the furthest that my graph goes to the left. And what I have to do is to figure out what x value is that. So right here, this is the furthest left point, and that is at the value of -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. So the furthest left I go is -6. So I'm going to write that down. Okay. Then I do the same thing. I go, how far right do I go? And there's my farthest point to the right. And that is the value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, +6. So what I do is I take my furthest left point, -6. I write that on the left because it's the left point. And then my furthest right point is 6, and I write that on the right. Now what I do is I'm talking about domain, which is the x values. So I write x in the middle. Okay, and when you write the numbers in this order, when you put the smaller number on the left and the larger number on the right, your symbols will always, always, always go in that direction. They're always going to eat towards the bigger number. Okay, they're going to eat towards the 6. Just imagine like these are mouths chomping down. They're going to always chomp towards the bigger number. But we have to be careful here because this is a closed circle at -6, and this is also a closed circle at +6. And I said that closed circles always have the line underneath. So we have to write the line underneath, okay? So that's the domain. And just to finish this off, in math language, whenever we're talking about domain, we always indicate that it's domained by writing the D there. And then we always put those brackets around it. And we're done. Now, range is the exact same thing, but for the y-axis. So I'll do that in red. So for the y-axis, we're asking how far up and how far down does my graph go? What's the highest point and the lowest point? So the highest point of my graph is right there. That's as high as my graph goes. And the lowest point of my graph is this one. So that's as low as my graph goes. Okay. So the lowest number is this point right here. That's as low as my graph goes. And on the y-axis, remember we're talking about y, that is at the value of 0. It's right in the middle. Okay. And then when we're talking about how high it goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It goes as high as 6. So it goes as high as 6 and as low as 0. When we are writing these numbers down, just like I do here, I always want the lower number on the left and the higher number on the right. So the lower number is the 0 and the higher number is the 6. And we're talking about range here, so it's y in the middle. And then like I said before, if you put the lower number on the left and the larger number on the right, we always, always, always put our Pac-Mans or our inequality symbol in that direction. I call them Pac-Mans because they look like a Pac-Man. I just drew it up here for you. There's my little Pac-Man right there. Okay. So what we have to remember here also is that because I have closed circles at those points, closed circle, closed circles means I have the lines going underneath. And then I'm talking about range. So I put my R and then I add my squiggles. Okay, I'm going to zoom out here. And I'm going to do the next one. And now I'm going to go a bit quicker. Okay, now that I did one very slowly. Okay, so right here, we're going to start with domain. And domain is X. And remember, X is always how far left, how far right. So my furthest left point is that guy, which is at the value of -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. -7. And my furthest right is at the value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the X or the domain ranges from -7 all the way to 5. I always put the lower number on the left, the higher number on the right. We're talking about domain, which is X, so that goes in the middle, and I always eat towards the right. I'm always going to eat towards the 5, the bigger number. Now, I need you to be careful here. We have to figure about our lines here. Do we put lines underneath or not? Well, if we look at -7, that's a closed circle, so it needs a line. But if we look at 5, that's an open circle. It wouldn't need a line. So at -7, that's a closed circle. So we need to draw the line in because it's also equal to -7. But the circle around the 5 means it's actually not equal to 5. They're like surrounding the 5 saying we're not actually at 5. So we don't put the equal sign attached to the 5 because it's an open circle. We put the D for domain and then add our brackets. Okay. Now I'm going to do range, which is y, my y-axis. So I'm asking how high up, how far down does this graph go? Well, if you look at your graph, the highest point is this point right here. The graph does not go above that. There's no graph up here. That's the highest point, and that's the lowest point. So my highest point at the value of y right there, that's just 1. So it goes as high as 1, but my lowest point is -1, -2, -3. It goes all the way down here, which is to the value of -3. So when you're writing out your range, you remember you put the lower number on the left, the higher number on the right. We're talking about range, so it's y in the middle. Now, same thing here, that's a closed circle at -3. So I need the line. But at 1, that's an open circle. So I don't include the line underneath. Close it up, and you're done. Okay. This one here is a little bit of a trick question. So always we start with domain, which is X. So my X axis, or how far left, how far right it goes, well, it's right there. It doesn't go any further to the left. It doesn't go any further to the right. It just is right there and it doesn't move. So that's the value of 1, 2, 3, 4, -5. Okay. So we don't really have a span like we had in the other graphs. Like this graph spanned from the left all the way to the right. This one doesn't actually span. It just stays in one spot. So all we do is we say X is equal to -5 because it's at -5 and that's it. It doesn't go to the left or to the right. It just stays right there. So that's domain. Now for range, or y, it's the same thing. How far low and how far up do we go? My lowest point is right here, which is at the value of -2 for my y. And it goes all the way up here, which is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It goes all the way up to 6. So for range, you put the lower number on the left, the higher number on the right, y is in the middle, and be careful, they are both open circles at both ends. So open circles at both ends means I just have the symbol like that. I don't have the line underneath as well. Put the brackets around, and we are done. Okay, next page. Again, I'm going to go a little bit quicker here. Okay, so we start as normal. We're going to start with domain, my x values. So how far left, how far the right? Well, my furthest left point is this guy right here, which is -1, 2, 3, -4. And I go all the way over here to the right. That's my furthest right point, and that is at the value 1, 2, 3, +4. So smaller number on the left, higher number on the right. We're talking about domain, so it's x. And now there aren't really any circles here. Like, remember we talked about having open circles versus closed circles? We don't have open versus closed circles here, but we can tell that this is a solid line that passes right through -4. So it is equal to -4. Same thing here. It is a solid line that passes through +4. So we know it is equal to +4. So when it's equal to them, we have to include the line underneath. All right, and for y, my range is how high, how low. So same thing, my lowest point is at -4 for y, and my highest point is at +4 for y. So my range is from -4 all the way to +4 with y in the middle. Same idea here, it's a solid line passing directly through 4 and directly through -4. So we know we're going to include the equal to part as well. Okay, this is something that's going to be a little bit new here. Okay, so domain, my x values. How far to the left, how far to the right? Okay, so my furthest left point is right there, which is at the value of x is 0. Okay, then if we look at how far to the right it goes, here's what's new. These arrows. And those arrows mean that when we're following along here to try to figure out how far to the right they go, these arrows mean they go on forever. They go on forever and ever and ever, ever and ever and ever, and we don't know where they stop. Okay, it just means they go on forever. And so we can't draw the whole thing going on forever, so we just stop it here and put arrows. So all we know is that it is starting here, that the lowest value for x is 0, but we don't know the biggest value. So in this case, what we do is all we know is that the graph is greater than 0, right? The graph spans all values greater than 0. It spans 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It goes on forever. So it spans every value bigger than 0, but because this also goes right through 0, it is equal to 0 as well. So we just say that for x, it spans all numbers greater than 0 and also equal to 0. Now for range, this is totally new. For range, it's how high, how low. So if we look, it kind of looks like that's our highest point right there, but it's actually not. Because of these arrows, they've kind of started to go in an upward direction. So we actually don't know how high this graph would go. It goes on forever, all the way to the sky. This one, same thing here. We don't actually know that that's the lowest point. Because of the arrows, it keeps going down and down and down slightly forever. So in this case, we don't know how high it goes or how low it goes, okay? It technically goes up forever and down forever. So it goes really high and really low. It spans all numbers up and all numbers down. So when that's the case, when it spans every number up high and every number down low, and we don't really know anything besides that, we just say that y is an element. That's the symbol to show element of real numbers. And that's the symbol for real numbers. So y is an element of real numbers, which just means the graph technically spans every number of y up high and every number of y down low. Okay, this one here. X values, my domain. So x values is how far to the left, how far to the right. So I can see my farthest left point is right here. I don't go further left than that. And that is at the value of 0. But if we go to the right, again, because of that arrow, we don't know how far to the right it goes. It never stops technically. So all we know is that the graph spans all of the numbers greater than 0. So just like we did in the other question, the values for x that this graph spans are all values greater than 0. And we do not write the equal to sign because of that open circle. It's not actually equal to 0. It's strictly greater than 0. So it spans 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, all numbers greater than 0. Now for range, my y values, how high, how low? Well, all we know is that, and that is the value of 4. Okay, so it doesn't go any higher than 4. It doesn't go any lower than 4. It's just right at, even with 4 all the time. No matter where we went, it's always just even with 4. So in that case, we say y is always just equal to 4. And I forgot my brackets. Okay. Last 3. Let's cruise through these ones. Okay. So for my domain, my x values, how far left? That is -1, -2, -3. And how far right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I go from -3 to 5. -3 to 5. X in the middle. I always put my symbols in that direction. I do not have an equal sign at the -3 because it's an open circle. I do include it at the 5 because it is a closed circle. And then for range, it's the same thing as the one we just did. My line is always right here, which is at the value of y is -1. So y is always -1. Doesn't go higher, doesn't go lower. Okay, here for my x values, my farthest left point is right here, which is at the value of -4. So I write that down. And then my value, x value that's the farthest right is this one, which is +2. X in the middle, I have closed circles at both ends, so I include the line. Now for range, how high, how low? My highest point is at 4. And my lowest point is at -2. So I put the lower one on the left, -2, my higher one on the right, 4. It's a y in the middle because we're talking about the y-axis, or up, down, and they're closed circles at both ends. So I include the line, and we're done. And finally, right here, for my x values or my domain, how far to the left, how far to the right? So my farthest left point is -3, and my farthest right point of the graph is right here, which is 4. So it spans all the way from -3 to 4. So -3 to 4, x in the middle, okay? At the -3, I have an open circle. At my furthest right point, at 4, I have an open circle. So open circles for both those numbers means no line underneath either symbol. And finally, range, my y-axis, how high, how low. My highest point is right there, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And my lowest point is right here, which is right on the x-axis, which is 0. So my range spans from 0 to 5. That's the lowest point, that's the highest point. Y in the middle. Now at 0, that is a closed circle at 0. So I need the line with my 0. My highest point, 5, are open circles. So open circles means I have no line there. Close it up. And sorry, I cut it off there. My bad. There you go. -3 to 4 for x and 0 to 5 for y.